to order the regular meeting of the City of Aransas Pass City Council, August 3rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Father, we thank you for this day that you've given us, my Father. As we think back of the history of Aransas Pass, this day, 50 years ago, my Father, we were visited by a storm. Oh, my Father, we thank you, my Father, for recovering from that. And also the same month, we were hit by Harvey just a few years ago, Lord. We thank you, my Father, for the protection. We thank you, my Father, for the guidance that you have given our city staff, my Father, to lead us through different situations that have come up within the city, Lord. When we look back at the history, we realize just how powerful you are and how blessed we are, my Father, to know that no matter what goes on, you are still there for us. You guide us through the darkest hours of our lives, my Father. I pray, Lord, that you be with the families that have lost loved ones due to this COVID-19 and the ones that are still battling, my Father. I pray, Lord, that you provide the comfort for each one of them. I pray for our medical staff, my Father, our first responders, that you be with them, my Father, as they go out on these calls, Lord. With our leadership in Washington, D.C., my Father, our state and our local level, my Father. You guide us, even in the City Council, you guide us to make the right decisions for our residents. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In compliance with Governor Abbott's order to reduce the chance of COVID-19 transmission, council meetings are live streamed at http://youtube.com/user/City of Aransas Pass. Public comments shall be made by either number 1, posting comment on the YouTube live stream site during the meeting and comment will be read aloud. 2, submitting an email to the city secretary at aptx.gov and state the respective agenda item at least 30 minutes before the start of the meeting. Or 3, submitting a written statement and place in the drop box located outside City Hall, 600 West Cleveland, Aransas Pass, Texas, at least 30 minutes before the start of the city council meeting and mark council meeting comment. Comments will be provided to council prior to voting on the measure for that particular meeting and shall be entered into the record of each meeting. These written comments shall serve as the required public testimony pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.007 and shall constitute a public hearing for purposes of any public hearing requirement under law. We'll go to presentation and proclamations. 3.1, an update by Larry Leamer, Project Manager, Landmark Structures, regarding our water tower.
How y'all doing today?
Good.
Hello, Larry.
So all we have left is completing the fence work. If y'all have driven by, we have all the fence posts installed.
Yeah.
The crew is actually coming out of the valley, so they got delayed today due to the weather from last week. So they expect to be back on site this week and hopefully come by Friday.
Cool.
So all of our
Excellent.
purchase items have been addressed other than just getting the fence done.
Looking real good.
So we'll follow up with Carrie and Eric and make sure there's nothing else that needs to be done after the end of the week.
All righty.
Very good.
Great.
very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good job. 3.2, an update by Eric Villarreal, LNV Engineering, regarding the water tower. He's not here. So let's go to 3.3, update by Russell Soki, AG, CM Project Manager, regarding Conran Harbor Road project.
Good evening, Council. Give you an update. Right now we're on phase 1. We've already done the subgrade, the geogrid, the LRA base, and we have the right-hand side, I guess that'd be the west side of curb and gutter that's all the way through that phase. And next week we should be starting on the left-hand side of the project of that phase, putting in the curb and gutter, and then it'll be followed up with asphalt a little bit later on. I can't give you that date though. So everything seems to be going pretty smooth.
No problems whatsoever.
You can show that if you like. I don't want to take up your time, but we do a little drone picture. Kind of gives you a better idea of what's going on out there instead of me explaining it. But there you can see that on the right-hand side, you've got your curb and gutters put in. Of course, didn't really show much, but that's your LRA base. This gives you all your strength to the road. Kind of a slow video. I mean, it goes all the way up to, I guess, the dog leg. It's about 2 miles up. That's where the first phase ends.
Is that the bike path on the right-hand side?
Yes, the bike end, you can see the curb gutter, and then on the right-hand side of that, that'll be the hike and bike path. And if you look on the
Nice.
left-hand side, you can see where we're putting in the foundations for the illumination. So they're about, the illumination is actually about 3/4 of the way through on that phase. We've actually got some permission to go ahead and put in some more foundations on Bigelow Street, which will speed the project up a lot.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
And you can see some of the foundations on the corner right there. Of course, all the conduit's tied into it. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll try to help you out on anything you need to know.
I think so far it looks great. I hope we stay on target and you don't run into any
Can't wait to see
problems.
it.
I think so. I don't see any major issues coming up. We've been, we had a few, but they're all getting addressed promptly. So things are going smooth. I'd say the contractor's probably ahead of schedule right now.
Good.
What I'm
That's
seeing
awesome.
According to their schedule, they're a little bit ahead.
Fantastic.
Nice.
Thank you for your
Well,
time.
thank you, Russell.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Mhm. Go to 3.4, presentation regarding summary of the proposed fiscal year 2020-2021 budget and capital improvement plan.
Hi, good evening. Before you give them a copy, right? Okay. All right. So basically, we had a presentation last week. The first page, which is gonna be your budget summary, is still gonna be the same. We still haven't done any major changes, any cuts to the budget as requested by the department directors. What we're really gonna go over right now is the following pages, which is our capital improvement projects that we have scheduled for fiscal year 2021 and moving forward. We have a couple of Colonia projects that's been in the books already since this year, and we're having some movement on those. Then we have the SCADA project, which is a FEMA project. So you'll see the funding for the SCADA project coming 90% from FEMA, some money from the state, and then the rest is gonna be coming from our utility fund. The following page, we still have the 30 generator projects, 30 generators that we are still haven't installed, and we are still working on that project. Then we have, that's also a FEMA project. Then we have the wastewater treatment plant, that's a FEMA project as well. That is, it is my understanding that that's in the design phase right now. Then this flooding drainage project, that's the CDBG DR money. That's the one with the big Stratton Campbell and
Right.
all of that. We're still moving forward with those, so we still need to list them as capital improvement projects moving forward. Then on the following page, part of that package is the sewer projects having to do with the CDBG DR money as well. Then we have the bulkhead for the Con Brown Harbor, which is a FEMA project as well. That's a $3.5 million project. Of that, the state's gonna kick in about FEMA will kick in about 3.1. The state will kick in another almost 200 plus, and we're gonna end up hopefully spending less than $100,000 on that project when it's all said and done.
Good.
Obviously, the Con Brown hike and bike trail that you just got a presentation, that's still an ongoing project with us. Rose and Beasley, it's a 2016 project that had been put on hold, but they're moving forward with that. That's a sewer line replacement. That's the only thing that's pending on that project. So they are moving forward. I spoke with Fernando today, and he feels very confident that sometime next fiscal year we should be able to complete that project altogether, and that's coming from bonds. Then we have another FEMA project, which is the Citywide Pumps and Metal Building. And I added this project, based on our conversations when we were having our budget workshop, the Newberry Park. The Newberry Park is that park that's right there. A lot of people see it, and it really is in dire need of a facelift. And I spoke with Fernando, Gary, and the budget committee, and we put it in there. It's in there for this fiscal year. It's budgeted at $35,000, and let's see if the budget hopefully can sustain that moving forward. The total projects that we have is $25 million. That's what we're looking at right now in total projects. Funding comes from various sources. The most important that we need to look at, obviously, is funding that's coming directly from the city. The utility fund is looking at about $800,000 in funding, and the general fund is looking at about another $35,000, and the harbor fund is looking at about maybe $700,000 in required funding to make these projects happen. The rest of the funding is coming from grants. So off all of that money, we're going to be putting in roughly about maybe $1 million, a little bit over that, and we're going to be hopefully getting $25 to $26 million worth of projects for our investment. This is what I have right now. Gary, do you want to add anything? Do you all have any questions? And this project, this is going to be changing. Like, this is what's being presented to the city secretary so that the public can view as our budget moving forward. But as we continue working in the budget process, as Mr. Edwards continues moving the budget forward, there may be changes. A lot of these projects hopefully will stay there. The Newberry Park, we don't know yet. Let's see what the budget can sustain. But as the budget gets to its final stages, this is also going to get more narrow and more clear. And there may be other projects that may be added, I don't know.
Excellent.
Any questions?
Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you, nice to be back.
The next would be board and commission appointments, and we have none, so we're going to go on to the consent agenda. All of the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. 5.1, approval of the special council meeting of July 14th, 2020, regular council meeting of July 20th, 2020, and special meeting of July 27th, 2020.
Well, I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 6 is public hearings, which we do not have any of, so we'll go to the city manager. Number 7, 7.1, presentation and discussion of final report of proposed recommendations to the city charter from the 2020 Charter Review Committee.
Yes, and I'll turn it over
Commission.
to Ms. Butler, who is chairperson of the committee, and we have a PowerPoint which we'll go through whenever you're ready, Ms. Butler, but she will give you the details of what's being recommended by the charter.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council. I'm here today on behalf of the Charter Review Commission, and it's my pleasure to present the 2020 Charter, City Charter Proposed Amendments. And so, go to the next slide. There we go. So the Commission convened under Article 12, Section 15 of the existing City Charter. And it consisted of a diverse group of 11 citizens that met towards reviewing, questioning, and deliberating on how we can improve our city charter. The commission's meetings were held publicly, virtually due to COVID-19. They were available also on the city's website and city's Facebook page. So as the commission deliberated, we did so in considering each of staff's recommendations one by one. Our first meeting was on July 9th, And at the end of that meeting, it concluded with the consensus of the commissioners to move forward with the process. Our second meeting, likewise, which was held on July 16th. And with there being no further staff changes, our July 23rd meeting was to consolidate those in a quorum meeting in which the commissioners voted one by one on each of the recommendations to move those forward as proposed charter amendments for your consideration here tonight. Now, in summary, the 2020 proposed amendments of the existing city charter, which consists of 12 articles. Although that there were no staff recommendations in Articles 1 and 2, the commissioners did have an opportunity, because we had the existing document, to review those charter articles and also to ask any questions and suggest any changes as commissioners. We could do so. Article 3 had two sections of proposed amendments. Article 4 had one. There were no recommended changes by staff in Articles 5, 7, or 8. Then we go to Article 9, which had one section for proposed amendment. Article 6 had one. Article 9 had 3 sections for proposed amendments. Articles 10 and 11 had none. And then finally, Article 12 had 2 sections for proposed amendments. This gives us a grand total of 9 proposed amendments, which you have before you in the commissioner's final report dated August 3rd. This document is also available for those who are viewing on the city's website of today's city council meeting as a PDF file. So if you will turn, the first amendment in the final report is Article 3, the council, Section 8, prohibitions. And this has to do with the structure of how the city hires department heads. So currently the charter says that this is subject to approval of city council. However, within the daily operations of the city manager's authority, the hiring process for department heads is being conducted by the city manager, not the council.
Mm-hmm.
The second amendment is actually in 2 parts, still under Article 3 for the city council. This is Section 15 regarding the municipal court. So the 2A amendment, the charter currently requires that the municipal court judges reside within the city limits. Staff has found that this requirement limits their pool of eligible candidates, especially when they're trying to appoint an alternate judge to serve in the absence of the existing judge. So that requirement would be removed, that the municipal court judge would have to reside within the city limits, but would have to be a voter of the state of Texas. Part 2B deals with the clerk for the municipal court, in that the existing charter states that the city secretary will act in that manner, but the city currently has 2 full-time court clerks. Therefore, the city secretary would not have to perform that function. The third amendment is in Article 4, elections, Section 2, filing as a candidate. The existing charter has a qualification of candidates in that their payment of bills be checked, bills, accounts, and taxes due to the city. We were informed that the U.S. Supreme Court had ruled this to be unconstitutional, so we're recommending that that be removed from the city charter to bring it up to date.
Okay, good.
The fourth amendment is Article 6, City Manager, Section 2, regarding the term and salary for the city manager. What is suggested here is that the appointment for a definite term language be removed. The existing contract for the city manager is a contract for 3 years, And if the council so chooses to maintain the option of acting on the city manager contract for a specific period of time, then we would recommend that defining a term, that language regarding appointed for a defined term be removed from the city charter. The Fifth Amendment is in section 9, Finance Administration, Section 1, Director of Finance, Powers and Duties. So since the city has a finance director who you heard from just a few moments ago, the recommendation is to replace the reference of city manager to finance director. Moving on, the Sixth Amendment that is proposed is still within this Section 9, Finance Administration, but it's Section 5, Sale of City Property Procedure. So it is recommended instead of the city council that the city manager be responsible for preparing rules, regulations for the sale of city property valued at $1,000 or less, because it is a small amount that this could be handled administratively instead of having to bring it before the city council. The council retains anything above $1,000. The proposed amendment number 7 is still within Article 9, Finance Administration, turning to Section 6, Purchase Procedure. So there is not a change to the existing language here, but the recommendation is to add a sentence at the end of this section that would allow for a detailed purchasing policy at the suggestion of the city's financial advisor. And so a detailed purchasing policy was prepared. The 8th proposed amendment is under General Provisions, Article 12, Section 3, Private Development. So the current charter currently prohibits the expenditure of public funds for the development or of privately owned subdivision. But in 1989, the Texas legislature enacted legislation that authorized municipalities to use public funds to promote economic development for all types of business and commercial activities. So therefore, the recommendation is to amend this provision, Section 3, Private Development, to bring it more in line and up to date. Then the final and 9th proposed amendment is still within the Article 12 of General Provisions, but this is a reference to Section 15, the Charter Review Commission. So the existing charter stipulates that the commissioners would convene and could amend every 3 years. However, the Texas Constitution, Article 11 states that no city, quote, no city charter shall be altered, amended, or repealed oftener than every 2 years. Therefore, it's recommended that this section be changed from doing so every 3 years to even numbered years, and that would get us to comply with the state statute. So again, in summary, there are 9 proposed amendments for your consideration. Just to clarify for our viewers, the commissioners, when we voted in our quorum to move forward with this process, it was not to change. The commission does not have the authority to change or alter the charter. It only makes recommendations to the city council, who will then determine whether or not to do so in the form of presenting those proposed amendments before the voters. And so it's our recommendation that you do that and let the voters have their say on these 9 proposed amendments. And this is in the effort to update our city charter, to align it with state statutes, and to align it with the current operations of the city of Aransas Pass. And then the next slide, I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the 2020 Charter Review Commissioners, Dr. Lawrence Bailey, Mr. Joe Dominguez, Ms. Elizabeth Doris, Mr. Philip Hyatt, Ms. Karen Mayer, Mr. Michael Moore, Mr. Michael Schultz, Mr. Myron Schroeder, Ms. Carol Salinas, and Mr. Renee Thacker. And so on behalf of the commissioners, we'd like to thank you for this opportunity to serve and participate in this process for improvements to our city charter for the good of Aransas Pass. And at this time, I'll be happy to assist with any questions that you may have.
I think you guys did an outstanding
Oh,
job. Thank
yeah.
you so much for your dedication to our city and
Oh, you're welcome.
for all that you've
Thank
done.
you, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
You
so
were-
much. Thank you for being such a great steward of Aransas Pass.
Yes.
Great presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juanice.
Those are very good recommendations.
Mhm.
Now, we don't vote on this tonight, do we, Gary?
No.
I didn't think so.
If
Okay.
I may, I'm going to ask Mary to go through the process in more detail related to the next steps in this.
Okay.
Yeah, at the August 17th council meeting, we'll hold a public hearing, and at that public hearing, you can receive comments from the citizens on the proposed amendments. The final report will also be published on the city's website. So it'll be a three-part item. We'll hold a public hearing. Council at that time will take action on which proposed amendments you want to push forward to the November election, and then we'll order the election and include any proposed amendments that will be going to, in the November election.
Excellent.
And question, if they're approved by the voters, the ones that are approved, going to effect on January 1?
No, they go into, I'll have to refer that to Roxanne, but I believe they go into effect immediately. Is that correct, Roxanne?
They go into effect immediately upon recognition of the vote. by
Okay.
the council.
Upon canvassing, is that correct? Once we canvass the results of the election, is that when they go into effect?
Right, the canvassing, when
Yes.
the council recognizes the vote, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, under City Manager, 7.2, consider an act on resolution number 2020-946, authorizing the selection of professional engineering services for the Community Development Block Grant Mitigation CDBG-MIT program funded through the Texas General Land Office, GLO.
There is a committee in place that reviewed applications for the engineering, which we're required to have as part of this grant, the CDBG MIT, and the proposals were, the RFQs were reviewed, and the recommendation that you see before you is a recommendation from the committee. And that's an issue we work with GrantWorks, and what is before you is agreeing, if you agree, to go with that engineering firm to work on the engineering, and there'll be a lot of it if we get the grant for the CDBG MIT, not to be confused with the CDBG DR, which we
Right.
have. We've already gotten that $10 million grant, and this is we don't know what this is going to be yet because it hasn't been approved. But that's what this is for, the engineering part of that, if you agree, and the recommendation that is made to you.
Well, I make a motion, we approve resolution number 2020-946.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
7.4, consider, discuss, and take action to approve ordinance number 2020-4319 relating to the issuance of land disturbance permits for activities that may result in the loss,
Skip one.
fill, or
Skip one.
destruction of environmentally sensitive areas within the city limits, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing a penalty for violation, providing a savings and severability clause, providing for publication in the official newspaper, and providing an effective date.
I think you
Skip
skipped
one.
one.
Did I miss one?
Yes.
Yeah, we skipped one.
Oh,
The third one.
Yeah.
7.3.
Okay. so we're going to consider an act on approving resolution number 2020-947, directing the city manager to calculate the city's property tax rate in accordance with state law provisions.
And this is dealing with COVID, and I don't know if you have anything to add on this. pretty much a housekeeping issue for tax rate dealing with the COVID issue. And Sandra can talk about it some more if you wish.
Okay, so this is gonna allow us, since, I'm gonna take this off, I'm sorry. Since there was a disaster declared by the governor in March because of the pandemic, this is allowing us to go ahead and use the 1.08 number to calculate what's called the voter-approved tax rate. And we need to pass, if the council wishes to do that, they need to pass this resolution so that we can go ahead and let the tax assessor know that this is the rate that we're going to be using to calculate our voter approved rate. It's just that the name changes the rollback rate, but now they call it the voter approved tax rate. Sorry about that.
So just because it's on live stream, we're not changing what we are
Correct.
That has to be clear to our
Yes,
residents.
we're not increasing, what we're proposing in our proposed budget, as we discussed in the workshop last week, is we are proposing the same tax rate of 0.7994. I don't remember what our current rate is right now, but it's in that neighborhood. That's the same proposed tax rate. This is just a mechanism to get to that number. Okay, so this will allow us to use 1.08% as a rate of calculating what they call the voter approved rate, meaning the rate that you cannot go beyond. You know, if you go beyond that rate, you would have to have an election.
Yeah. Well, I just don't want anybody to think that
No,
we
no,
are
no, no,
raising
no,
their
no,
tax
no.
rate this year.
We are not raising the tax rate to
Right.
$1. We are proposing to keep the tax rate as the current rate that it is right now. And this is just a mechanism of calculating that rate that they're gonna be using. And we have this, because of the pandemic, we are able to use this mechanism at this time. And that's the only thing that's different.
This is just for this 1 year only, correct?
This is just for this 1 year only. It has to be a declared disaster, and the city has to be affected by the disaster for you to be able to use this calculation method. And next year, God willing, we will not be in a declared disaster, and things will go back to normal. But for this time, yes. This is by no means are you approving a tax rate tonight either.
Okay.
All right, just letting you all know that this is just the steps that we're going into calculating our tax rate. But by no means is this something that cannot be undone in the future if that's the desire of City Council.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2020-947, directing the city manager to calculate the city's property tax rate in accordance with the state law provisions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we're going to go to 7.4. Consider and discuss and take action to approve ordinance number 2020-4319 relating to the issuance of land disturbance permits for activities that may result in the loss, fill, or destruction of environmentally sensitive areas within the city limits, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing a penalty for violation, providing a savings and severability clause, providing for publication in the official newspaper, and providing an effective date. Did we lose Roxanne?
Ms. Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, while we're getting another person to participate in this with us, Roxanne's already on the line. Burl is in the audience also. And two of you were part of the discussion related to the Wetlands Ordinance. And that's what this is about. After months of work on this, it's finally in a form, and Roxanne's been doing a lot of work to bring it to the local angle as much as possible. Burl has been doing a lot of the technical work, was involved with a lot of the technical work in the meetings that went on for months. So were two of you, and we appreciate all the time and effort that has gone into that. hopefully we don't have a problem with the phone as we,
Mr. Mickle and Jack, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Roxanne, are you there?
what we're doing right now is bringing online Mr. Mickle and Jack, who worked closely with Val, who kind of led the effort for Texas A&M at Houston.
Yes, I had been on hold, so now you have to call me back.
Mr. Mickle and Jack, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay. And Roxanne?
Yes.
Okay, so we have Roxanne on the line, Mr. Stephen Mickle and Jack, who worked with Val, who led the effort for Texas A&M at Houston. As I said, months of work went into this, and it's now down to the local angle. Roxanne has been working on the local angle, and from the legal perspective, we're to the point where we're ready to bring it to you, the council, for consideration at some point. It's simply a presentation to you tonight of where we are with this. As I said, Burrell's in the audience also. So I'm going to ask if Mr. Mickle and Jack, if you can hear me, can you hear me, Mr. Mickle and Jack? I'm on the other side of the room.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Mickle and Jack to give an overview from the work that he did on it, and Val and others that were involved with this at his end at Texas A&M. After that, Roxanne, you can talk about, if you would please, the work that you've been doing, and then Burrell can talk about some of the technical aspects that he's been involved with. We had a long meeting today with Roxanne and Burrell to work out additional details, and a lot of good work came out of that meeting and the numerous meetings we've had since this whole process started for the Wetlands Ordinance. Mr. Mickle and Jack, if you would give an overview, talk about, if you would, begin by talking about why a Wetlands Ordinance is necessary and an overview of this particular piece of legislation. It's yours now, Mr. Mickle and Jack.
Hi, thank you so much. Appreciate everyone's time here. I'm happy to shed some light on where this came from. So I believe the initial purpose was that certain environmentally sensitive areas in and around the city, there was concern about loss of some of these areas which provide risk reduction value as well as habitat value, as well as recreation value, as well as public habitat value, or public health value. And so that development, if it was going to happen in certain areas that were at risk, that they at least meet certain use standards and design standards to mitigate some of the impacts from development. So essentially the ordinance is designed to protect the cities in the public interest in hazard risk reduction, protect critical environmental features, and maintenance of public health while providing developers a fair and objective application process. So we want to include clear standards for the projects that are being proposed so that there's no surprises. The vehicle for the entire process is what we're calling the application. So the ordinance sets forth the creation of a reviewing body, administrator, and a clear set of rules and standards for the preparation of an application, and then ultimately review of the application by the board. So if all the standards are there and everyone is there in black and white letters in the ordinance, everyone has a clear understanding of what the standards are, and there shouldn't be surprises. The intent is to propose construction and design standards that will limit potential adverse impact to these sensitive areas. The intent section identifies a variety of functions related to these areas that are important to human health and recreation, environmental issues, and flood risk mitigation functions to the community. And the purpose is to ensure the protection of these areas and reduce expenditure of municipal funds on, for example, public infrastructure to these high-risk areas, perhaps the development can have adverse impacts, and certainly promote development that would limit or avoid the generation of debris, as well as other risks and loss of sensitive environmental areas, including wetlands. Not all development or use activities in defined areas are going to require a review. So we have an applicability section which defines in which cases an application is required. So the goal here is to exempt certain routine activities related to, example, agriculture, livestock, passive recreation, maintenance of existing buildings and homes, emergency projects, to be conducted without having to go through a review process. The EHA board is created to be a reviewing body of these applications. Generally, ideally, specialized expertise or knowledge with the relevant subject matter areas, the development process, the administrator review would be a nice fit for the board, which is appointed. The ordinance establishes rules for the board's formation, the schedule of meetings, limits to its duties and powers to activities, basically for the effective administration of the ordinance and review of the application. Section 6 establishes an administrative process for the application. So we've created the board, we've created the application. Now we want to establish the process for how this is going to be administered and reviewed. So this provides the applicant with a clear set of standards and timelines, no surprises, and it provides standards for the board's review of an application. So this section stipulates the application fees along with the escrow fee for third-party review of an application. In particular, its technical requirements. So this is not unusual. It's actually quite common. For example, when engineering expertise is needed and for which the board may not be prepared to evaluate on their own. Once the application is received, it is reviewed for completeness and then forwarded to the board for review. Like most of our processes, we have a notice for public comment to be provided. Then we get into standards for review that the board has to use. So this is not an arbitrary process. As long as the application meets these standards of review, the board should find it the affirmative. If the board determines that the applicant hasn't met the standards of review or the standards of design, it would be go back to the applicant, rejected, or go back to the applicant for updates or changes to the application. Tool standards are provided to ensure that the proposed use or development meets the intent and purpose of this ordinance. There's a section to provide relief from the standards in the ordinance, which can be granted to an applicant. The applicant will have to prove that conditions on the site make particular compliance to particular rules impossible, and of course the applicant can't have created those conditions. And the relief that is granted is the minimum required to help meet the standards of the ordinance. So now we've established the applicability, the board, the review standards, and potential relief. The ordinance then now goes into what goes into the application. So this is modeled after a typical development application that you might find in a zoning or other similar ordinance. The goal of that, the applicant is to provide details relevant to the board's ability to do its job and to do a review. So simple developments, let's say a single-family home with a small impact will only be required to submit basic information. We don't want this to be burdensome. Larger, more complex developments will require additional information, and certain developments of a certain size would require a compensatory mitigation plan on the premise that it would be impossible to not have an adverse impact. So that would also need to be included within the application. And again, the mitigation plan includes standards for, the ordinance includes standards for how that plan is to be prepared. Wrapping up and getting to the end, certain uses are prohibited for which no application could be prepared. Basically, these uses are so sensitive or so prone to flooding or storm surge or having an adverse impact that they cannot be safely developed or conducted within these defined areas. Section 9 provides standards for all other uses and development. So the applicant will be looking at these standards to make sure that what they are proposing, if they follow these standards, they would generally avoid the impact that the ordinance is hoping to protect from. So these are generally standards that allow different uses, but we want to minimize these impacts. So we're pertaining to protecting the pre-development qualities of the site, such as sorry, I'm skimming through this here really briefly. We're reducing risk from development in these high-risk and prone locations. So we're looking at standards that pertain to the generation of debris, standards that pertain to setbacks from wetlands, management of waste disposal, use of fill, clustering of uses, use of heavy equipment, as well as maybe some mitigation activities related to elevation of structures and utilities on the site. So basically, the ordinance concludes at the end that there is the ultimate safety valve, so any uses that were permissible before the adoption of the ordinance will be allowed to continue through a clause on non-conforming uses, which is fairly standard language in the development world. So, and then finally, the ordinance establishes some requirements for enforcement, penalties, posting of a permit, and other activities related to the adoption and implementation of this ordinance. So I hope we've kind of communicated the intent and purpose and where this was coming from, and then to design a process that would protect obviously the city's and the public's interest while providing a fair and timely review process for any applicant, and then providing clear standards for how an application will be reviewed, which I really think is, from a planning perspective and enforcement perspective, is good business. So, any questions? If not, I yield the floor.
Stephen, if you would stay on the line, I'm going to ask Roxanne to.
Sure, absolutely.
Roxanne, if you could kind of give an overview also of the work that you've been doing on it, and maybe some of the outcome of the work that has come to fruition so far on your side.
Yes, thank you. Mayor and council members, this is such an exciting day to have this wetlands ordinance. I just don't know how many people on the coast have one, but I can tell you that the city of Aransas is certainly a heaven for wetlands, and in that essence, we must protect, preserve, and serve them. And so this great presentation provided by the university is certainly appreciated. Their side of the story was really geared towards the expertise of environment and the language to be used. My expertise just came in the form of actual procedural requirements at our local level. So if you'll take a look, if you have this map in front of you, our city is actually going to have two environmental sensitive areas. There's District 1 and there's District 2. District 2 primarily encompasses all the bordering waterlines that you can think of in our city. And District 1 are where wetlands are included, but they're inside the city limits really that are not boundarying the water. Depending on what kind of proposal or development you're going to want to do in ESA 1 or ESA 2, you'll have those rules that we just talked about that must be followed. The big thing for the city council to do next is going to be really important for you to appoint the board members that are expertise and their qualities to be able to provide us with the best advice. When one does file an application for this, for the development in an environmentally sensitive area, it's going to be whether or not we're going to issue them a land disturbance permit. That's what the permit's going to be called, a land disturbance permit. The ESA administrator, our police chief, our public works director, our fire chief will all look at the application, hire any necessary third-party recommendations, and they will make a recommendation to the board on the application. The board also will make recommendations to the city council, and the city council will be the ultimate decider of whether or not to issue that land disturbance permit. I think that there is a lot of specifics and value in this ordinance. Generally speaking, I think it's important for you to understand we have environmentally sensitive areas 1 and 2 in our city, and if you're going to build something, you better check if you're in 1 or 2, because if you are, you're going to have to run across this board and make sure that you do everything possible to protect our wetlands.
Okay, Burl, is that Roxanne? Is that it, Roxanne? Did you have anything more? For now?
Yeah, I was waiting for innovation.
Oh.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you to both of you. It was a real
Yes.
pleasure working with Texas A&M on this.
About the
And
only
you-
thing I have to add to it, to put it in a nutshell, we're trying to protect our estuaries, the fish that are around, any kind of wildlife that we have, we're trying to preserve it. That's, to me, that's the bottom line, what we're actually trying to do. You know, it's an important ordinance. this is the jewel of Texas. I'm sure you all agree with that. This is one of the last places for development on the coast, probably anywhere. We've got to protect it and do the best that we can to administrate these laws and to be fair about it. But bottom line, when we're talking about compensatory mitigation, we're also trying to put it back the way it was. We're going to have development. It's going to happen, but we've got to do our best to try and make it the way it was, or better, if at all possible. And bottom line, council's going to be the ones that has the final say in any of these permits. That's paramount. That's not for an administrator. That's not for a board. That's for you guys. It's important that you have control of this issue. So, we've tried to, Roxanne pointed out several things that we needed to address, and she did that today. And a lot of them were the timelines that we have to deal with these issues, and not cutting ourselves short and not being able to accomplish what we're actually trying to do. So it was a fun project, I'll say that. So, if there's any questions or I don't know what else to add.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
So Stephen, Roxanne, and Burl, anything else to add before we turn it over to the council for questions and any further action by the council?
I just want to thank the council members for having such wide intuition about protecting our wetlands. And these wetlands areas were helped produced by the university. So, Garrett, do you want to tell them a little bit about the expertise that went into this?
Actually, that'd be good for Stephen, who's on the line, who was part of that expertise at the university. So, Stephen, you want to talk about the team at your end that dealt with this? I know they were, you and Val and others were in on the meetings that we held here each morning at 11 o'clock for a long period of time. So, Stephen, if you're still on the line, you want to talk about your team at that end? Stephen?
I guess we lost him.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? I put myself on mute.
There we go.
Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you. If you could talk about...
If I can remember what I just said, it was perfect.
Well, you know what the question is, so go ahead.
Absolutely. No, our team is part of the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, so our job as an educational institution is to provide guidance and tools and data. We're not here to tell people what to do. The team came to us with the issues that they had in mind. Our planning background, writing an ordinance is something of an art form. There's some legalities that are involved. We spent a tremendous amount of time to construct something that would protect the city as well as provide a fair review and application process. Specifically with respect to the map, there was an interesting sort of back and forth very early in the process. Wetland delineation is not exactly a straightforward process. However, we knew that the wetlands themselves and the areas around them were environmentally sensitive, as well as having a mitigation purpose in addition to being good habitat and providing for recreation. So we kind of stepped away from specific wetlands and really thought about these as prone areas. So we used a combination of source data sets to look at wetlands and then to work with the team about what was going to be a reasonable outline for these districts. Something that wasn't going to be too onerous, but still accomplish the objectives of the ordinance. And I do believe we've kind of stepped away, I think, from any standards pertaining to wetlands themselves, other than, I think, a standard for buffers around wetlands. I think most developers coming into the site would have to prepare a wetland delineation. We saw no reason that should be redundant within this ordinance, so that information would be there in any application. So these were the kind of things that we really wanted the city and the group to to work through and hopefully give y'all something that is going to work and meet your needs and meet your interests and accomplish the goals. And again, within a larger sort of legal framework, provide something that was going to be fair and defensible.
And at our end, the team was made up of Mayor Pro Tem Moore, also Council Member Scruggs, Burl, Jose, the Planning Director, and myself. And Burl, was there anybody else in on this? I think that was it primarily. Yeah, on our end. So you can see there were quite a few people involved with this at our end and at Texas A&M. So a lot of work has gone into this, for your information. So, well, yes, absolutely. Don't know if you have questions or any other comments that you might have and your feelings on this. I think it does call for action, Mary, is it?
That's correct, yes.
Any comments that you folks may
I have a question. Should we have gotten copies of this ordinance in our packet? I don't have it. I don't have any.
Yes, you should have gotten it today. Do you want me to make copies and pass them out right now, or?
Yeah.
I've got the final copy.
I've got a copy.
Yeah.
I don't.
You have it?
I would just,
Also might be worth mentioning that this was a service provided to us by the university at no cost to the city.
Yes, thank you, Roxanne.
and I would just like to say it was a pleasure working with Texas A&M, your staff, and Roxanne, for you coming in and really picking up the ball and getting to make sure that it's done the right way so that we can get this on the agenda tonight. I know there was a lot of work that went into it, and thank you to everybody, because this is important to our city.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and this is the final, there are penalties for violations of this ordinance. And so this ordinance will become effective immediately upon publication. So as soon as we get this in the newspaper, it's effective.
Excellent.
For those of you on the line, what we're doing now is two members have not seen the ordinance, so they're looking over the ordinance now. And we'll see if you want to act on that, or if, Mary, I'm assuming if they're uncomfortable, we could delay that.
You could, you could postpone it to the next meeting.
Yes.
A lot of what was written in there, like Steve said, is the legal verbiage of the ordinance. And the Texas A&M attorney actually reviewed it and gave us helpful ideas throughout, so.
I would think that I would need to just kind of review it. Just like I said, didn't get a copy of it, and not that I don't trust the work that you did, but I think that I need to do just to kind of review it before I can vote on it.
So, Roxanne, if you can hear me, the request is to wait before an actual vote, and also, Stephen, does that run up against any deadlines, or just a matter of moving everything back? I would imagine it's a matter of moving everything back for a 2-week period, because I don't know if there's a deadline that we are up against other than a self-imposed. Once it's approved, then we have deadlines to follow. So that would be my assumption.
I don't know how Billy feels. I mean, I'm just.
What do you think, Billy?
I'm comfortable with what I've heard tonight, and we have to protect our wetlands. We have to protect Redfish Bay. You know, we're under the gun with Axis Midstream. They want a trench across the bay to put pipelines across there, and once that starts,
We're done.
we're done. Everything's a waste of time from that point on if we don't stop that. So I'm ready to vote for it right now. We have to protect our bays.
And this ordinance was to protect us.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't feel comfortable in voting for it because I have not looked at it, but
Sure.
I'm just,
Sure.
the majority is
Yeah.
what rules.
I'm ready to go.
At this time, there just needs to be a motion made, whether the motion is made to table or approve or deny.
Okay.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-4319 relating to the issuance of land disturbance permits for activities that may result in the loss, fill, or destruction of environmentally sensitive areas within the city limits, repealing all conflicting ordinances, providing a penalty for violation, providing a savings and severability clause, providing for publication in the official newspaper, and providing an effective date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm going to, not that I oppose it, but I need to review it, so I'm just going to abstain because I didn't have a chance to. Can I do that? Without voting?
You're announcing your reason for abstaining, and that's good.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So we're gonna go.
Nice work. Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you. So we're gonna go to 7.5.
Steve, I think that's it, so you can go unless you want to stay on the line and listen to the meeting, but I don't.
He's probably already hung up.
Okay, so if I heard correctly, it was approved?
Yes, sir.
It was approved.
All right, I look forward to following up. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Geek Maggie's.
7.5, consider an act on approving disaster declaration issued by the mayor in response to Hurricane Hannah.
This is a declaration, continuation for a 7-day period, is that correct, Mary?
That's correct.
And after 7 days, it'll be time for another meeting, and we can extend it from that point on. We're required to do 7 days for this particular one, and you'll have an opportunity to extend it beyond that if you so wish at the next special meeting that we have.
Okay.
Did we have a disaster? Did we have
Yeah,
a
we barely
disaster
got any
because
rain.
of Hurricane
We have
Hannah?
all kinds of disasters.
Well, we have
hurricanes,
disasters every
we have
day.
hurricanes. You take your pick. We have COVID, we have hurricanes.
We have rain.
So is this for everything that's going on,
No,
or this is just for
this is-
Hurricane Hannah?
This is just
Did the
Hurricane
city,
Hannah. This is there in case we have the opportunity to get funding for any damage that is related to Hurricane Hannah. That's the only reason we're doing it. We want to be ready in case that, through the governor's office, that opportunity presents itself. So we're setting ourselves up for potential funding if needed.
Okay. Well, I make a motion that we approve the disaster declaration issued by the mayor in response to Hurricane Hannah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number 8, community enrichment. Number 9, development services. Number 10, finance. And number 11, information technology. We have nothing on those, so we're going to go to number 12, public safety.
And we got to get the police chief on the phone. And,
First, we had to get Roxanne because we lost her.
oh, okay.
You're on there, Roxanne?
I'm on.
And then we're getting the police chief who will direct this part of the meeting as it relates to his department. Wish we had the good old days where we could
At the marina,
actually be.
Oh,
for
did
our
ya?
docks.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know the big bar?
uh-huh.
It moved it and tore it all the way to the middle of the pavilion, tore the ends off of it, and tore the water pipe, the
Okay.
water line. So we
Okay.
did. It was
Okay.
Hello, hello.
over the
Hold on,
grease
Eric, hold on just a moment, let me bring in Roxanne. Roxanne, are you there?
Yes.
Eric?
Yep.
Do you want me to read the item?
Yeah, Eric, we're now to your item, and the mayor pro tem is going to read the item, and you can talk about it.
12.1, consider an act on approving an agreement between the City of Aransas Pass and T-Mobile Cellular for free public safety cellular service for up to 10 years.
Yes, so this item, Mayor Pro Tem and Council, was brought to me by T-Mobile. They're actually doing a first responder public safety promotional deal right now, and that is that if you qualify, you get free text calling and data, or you can is $15 a month as opposed to free, and it gives you like unlimited tethering or something like that, which we don't need. So I opted to go towards the free plan. We had to move pretty quickly on getting it based off the T-Mobile rep. So I've approved it, but I need your post-approval to do this. Now, what this does is all the phones we currently have through Verizon, we will no longer need those phones for the phone service of it. But what we want to do, since Verizon is far more dependable as it pertains to data, we want to put data back in the cars permanently. Right now, the officers have to tether their phone each time they get into the car and activate that data. With this T-Mobile phone, the phone service and everything will be totally separate from the data. The Verizon will remain the data in the cars, and the officers will no longer have to worry about connectivity issues, connecting, not connecting to the computers and stuff like that. And in the long run, it's actually going to save us quite a bit of money because we have free phones for 10 years.
Excellent.
Bargain twice the price.
Yeah. Any questions?
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve an agreement between the City of Aransas Pass and T-Mobile Cellular for free public safety cellular service for up to 10 years.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
12.2, consider an act on authorizing the mayor to renew the agreement with DRC for debris removal and other emergency services.
Okay, so this is a customary agreement that we bring to you either every year, every couple of years, and we did actually, we didn't have to use this one, but we had to use the Seagates one, which is another agreement related to disaster. DRC is for like debris cleanup and the sort. We actually did have them on standby and ready to go in the event that we would have needed them for Hannah. Fortunately, we did not. We hope that we never have to use them again, but this is just to keep them basically on retainer if you approve.
Okay. Well, that's a definite.
I make a motion, we renew the agreement with the DRC.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We go to number 13, city council or staff announcements.
Yes, a special council meeting on August 10th. If the council is in favor of it, we're looking at the possibility of a noon meeting. What is the single item we're looking at?
It's to extend the disaster declaration for a longer period of time.
That's that 7-day period I was talking about earlier. So if you're okay with it, we could do a noon meeting and not take you away from your evenings if that's an option for you.
And that's the only thing on the agenda?
At this point, if that changes, we'll come back to you and say, no, I need to have a different time. But
Well,
that is
I
the
will be
only-
coming in from Houston on that day, so if it's at noon, I can't make it, but if that's all that's on there, it's,
That's all that's on
Yeah.
there. We need to
Yeah.
make sure we have
If
a
you-
quorum then.
We only need 3.
Okay.
I should be here.
if something
I'll be here.
changes and you add more to it, I'd like to know.
I'm
Maybe I
thinking
can.
of some remark to make, but
It's
I
coming
of course
on.
we would, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, okay.
So we'll, Mary,
Due to, Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes?
due to COVID-19 and the removal of tested open meetings requirement, Councilmember Scruggs could participate on that call via video or phone.
Okay, okay, all right.
so I'm hearing you say you're okay with the noon meeting,
Yeah.
so we'll make note of that. The other issue is, please note that we did not use cell phones tonight, toss cell phones around. It was done much more sophisticated with the system that IT worked with us on, as far as setting microphones around the room, using a conference phone system. We were able to hear everybody, they were able to hear us, hear each one of you. That's a system we are continuing. That machine stays in this room, that's for this room, including those satellite microphones also. So moving forward as far as communication goes, including some of the videos you saw tonight also. So I just want to point that out
Oh, good.
as far as the
Very good.
report for staff announcements. So that's all that we have, Mayor Pro Tem.
Excellent. Number 14 is citizen comments. Citizen comments are intended for the matter that are not scheduled on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name and address for the record. Be advised the Texas Open Meeting Act prohibits the City Council from responding and discussing your comments. The law authorizes the following: make a statement of factual information, recite existing policy, advise that the subject may be placed on an agenda for a subsequent meeting.
Mayor Pro Tem, there was no comments posted on the live stream.
Okay. Anybody else want to speak? We'll close that. We'll now go into executive session. 15.1 is Section 551.071 of the Texas Open Meeting Act to meet with its attorney to seek legal advice on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the City Council under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with the Texas Open Meeting Act, and Section 551.087 deliberation regarding economic development negotiations related to an RV park on Avenue A, Mark Marlowe. 15.2 is Section 551.072 deliberations regarding real property related to property located at 221 South Commercial, lots 4 through 8 and 23 through 32, Block 549, Aransas Pass Town Site, San Patricio County. 15.3, Section 551.087 deliberations regarding economic development negotiations regarding to Tom Furlow RV Park.
That's it.
The time is 7:11.
And we have some videos with this, so we're asking if the council approves, we'd like to stay in this room for the closed session.
I agree. Thank you again, Juanice.
Bye-bye.
Great
Thanks.
job.
Good night, girl.
Good night, Burl.
Is everything turned off?
Take me to your leader.
Let's make sure. Mary, you gonna check and make sure everything's turned
They're
on?
set.
Okay.
Is everything turned off?
I was gonna, Mr. Rhodes, do you need to stay for any action taken after tonight?
Let's see, furlough will be no. In the case of